one of the things that comes to mind to me, I mean, when we work with different teams or we talk to, different initiatives, that people running different initiatives within a business, like success tends to be like, oh, we need to hit this revenue target, or we want to be, ensuring that we have this many people who have signed up for the podcast or stream the podcast, or, we think about these things all the time. And I'd love to hear your take on, like, how do you measure success of a community? Like, how do you think about that even for the community that you run at Amazon AWS?
I'm going to give a more generic answer, but when you're thinking about measuring a community, usually what you measure is what you affect. So if you're not measuring the success of the people who are in the community or the value that they're getting from the community, if that's not part of the measurements, then you're really not going to be tracking that. Thus, you might lose sight of what makes your community good. And so when you are thinking about focusing on metrics to say if a community is successful, that is one of those things where it's a complicated answer to a simple question, because a lot of it depends on who's asking it. If you're a company that has a sales division, they want to know how many leads they can get from the community. If there is a customer service section, they want to know how much of their the problem tickets are being diverted because people are getting their questions answered in the community. If you are in marketing, you're wondering, like, how can I blast a marketing message out to this community so they know what we're selling this week? So that answer also, like, who asks those questions, or also it's dependent on what department community falls in. And when you're a member of this community, you just see one monolithic company, but when you're in the company, you understand all the different facets. And also when there's like an exec change, or there's tumult in the company or in the industry, all of those things can change. So community needs to be super adaptive in terms of what it measures and how, but it also needs to make sure that it doesn't focus off the core nugget of why the community is, why is it there? So I think generally speaking, everyone knows that there's usually a North Star, then there's strategy, and then there's tactics. And all of those are things that can change, but the North Star needs to be something that's bought in with all of the stakeholders in a company to define what community is, so that when you are answering these questions, you're putting it in the nuanced answer saying, we can do this as long as it doesn't break this portion that we agreed on cannot be touched. So it's subjective. So it depends answer, but it's kind of like all of those things need to be worked into measuring a community. But if I had to boil it down to anything, it is, what does the community itself say it's worth? And there's ways of doing that, saying, like, if I paid you $5, would you leave the community? If I paid you $500, would you leave the community? If I paid you, if you had to pay $500, would you join this community? If there is a $3 annual subscription, would you pay that every month to be, or every year to be a part of this community? So there's ways to figure out worth for measurement, but it all depends on, like, what is valuable. And the community itself, of course, usually is attached to a company, and so everything comes back to money. So that's a good bridge to figure out the monetary value of a community by figuring out how much people would want to pay for it in a hypothetical way.